Welcome to the Marketing Mastermind, a podcast designed to elevate your entrepreneurial mindset and help you take your business to the next level through digital marketing. Join your host, agency owner Hillary Russell, as she interviews experts from around the world, dives into business success secrets, and gives tactical mindset training to help you elevate all areas of your life and business. Ready? Let's dive into another Marketing Mastermind episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Mastermind. I have, I'm just going to jump into a little bit of a maybe sneak peek on this. I've got a really special guest here with me, guys. His name is Mike Zeller, and I'll tell you about him in just a moment here. But we're going to explore a concept that I know every single entrepreneur struggles with and has mental conflict with. So I'll leave it at that, give you a little bit of a cliffhanger. Mike, thank you so very much for joining me for this episode today.
Hillary, excited to be here, and I love connecting with brilliant minds in the entrepreneur space and marketing space, so this will be a ton of fun.
Yes, it will. Yeah, I'm excited. So for our listeners, guys, just as a little bit of background on Mike, he has a phenomenal experience, background, history as an entrepreneur, business architect, well-deserved, an entrepreneur. You've, in your background, have founded and partnered with and been a part of over 20 different ventures, 20 different companies, 20 different, that's insane.
Yeah, I've been a part of quite a few things, and it's been a crazy ride. I've made more than my share of mistakes, but I've also had more than my share of wins. So if you take enough swings at the plate, you're going to get some base hits and home runs every now and then.
I can respect that. Absolutely. Yeah. And just, to build to your credibility. So I read that through those businesses, you've done over $100 million in sales in just the last 10 years. Guys, also, and you listeners will know, I instantly associated with you and liked you that much more, Mike, because you are a master NLP practitioner, which I am myself. Love that's
Amazing.
kind of a core methodology that you build from. But Mike has also trained with experts like Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Jay Abraham, and has been featured in Business Insider, Forbes Coaches Council, Thrive Global, Huffington Post, Fox Radio. I'm sure the list goes on and on and on. And our topic here today, and what I really want to talk to you about specifically, Mike, is your book that was released just last year, The Genius Within. So, man, that is quite a list of accolades and of experience. Your resume is just packed full. I guess just starting off here, give us a little bit of insight into the early stages, the early parts of your entrepreneurial journey. What did that look like?
Yeah, first real serious part was when I jumped into buying real estate and investing in real estate and then selling real estate. So I was, oftentimes our first step as an entrepreneur is being a very skilled or highly compensated 1099 or self-employed contractor, right? And that's pretty much what it is you've got your own job that you direct, and you direct how much you make by your production. And that's what it was. And it was wonderful. But then eventually 3 years into it, I was burning out already. And I was like, if this is all I do, my soul is going to die. And I did a mini sabbatical inspired by 4-hour work week to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and took 6 weeks off, literally unplugged, didn't turn my cell phone on. And found some people to work my business while I was gone, and found out that was possible. Things didn't fully fall apart. And then while I was there, I realized, hey, if I'm the engine of my business, I'm going to get tired.
Mm-hmm.
And the old adage, great operators get tired, great business owners get rich. I wanted to get much wealthier than just producing and grinding. And so then I realized, all right, I can design sales engines and design businesses, hence the business architect. If I design out something magnificent, then it has a chance to really flourish. And I don't have to be in day, and I can collect a check and still actively direct it, but not actively manage it. And then I came back, helped start a socially minded car dealership. We were the number one rated car dealership in the Southeast. That was our goal. And then every car we sold helped us give away another car to a single mother in need. And so we gave away almost $400,000 worth of cars during my time of ownership. And that was one of the highlights of my entrepreneurial career. And then a few other ventures along the way, marketing agency, focused on branding and explainer videos and storytelling and funnels and things like that. And then men's clothing line. Now I've got a health clinic venture called Superhuman IV, where we tackle fatigue, aging, addiction, and mental health issues. And then I still have my coaching and a few other ventures I'm a partner or collaborator in.
How amazing. That's so cool. I love too that you were able to create a business in the auto industry, a car dealership, where you're also able to give so much. I think that is very commendable. That's phenomenal. Also, I would say that it's pretty impressive that at such an early stage in your entrepreneurial journey that you had the realization that you cannot be the engine of your business.
Yeah.
Would you mind maybe expanding on that a little bit more, especially for our listeners, because many of the listeners for our podcast are entrepreneurs themselves that are in these same points in their journey, just starting out, not quite sure what that business really is going to look like yet.
Yeah, good question. It's being the engine. If you look at most entrepreneurs that don't go beyond one or two employees, they kind of stay the doer, the worker. And you got to look and see, all right, how can I work my way out of a job as soon as possible? Like my Superhuman IV, I'm working my way out of a job, even though it's only been open a month and a half. Like I'm driving certain sales and other things. And the goal is to shift from doing like $20 an hour activities to doing $200 an hour activities to doing $2,000 an hour activities, and on, right? And so we're designing, architecting, partnering, collaborating, as you grow and move from the hands-on implementer of everything, you train up and you develop people. People do want to be developed and do want to own and operate, ventures. Fortunately, there's a lot more personality types that are better at managing than they are at creating and envisioning and taking risk. There's a small percentage of us are actually born as the risk takers. I think in America, it's still only 4% of people are entrepreneurs, even in this quote expansion of self-employment and entrepreneurs. A lot of people want to be guided. They're just wired differently. An entrepreneur is a little crazy. You got to be a little crazy because odds are you're going to fail. I've failed more than my share of times. I've struck out a bunch and it sucks. Never not sucks, but you get a little more comfortable with it and know, just get back up, take another swing. And so I think if you look at how do I build a team, how do I build a system, how do I build a vision that people can get behind, and then work your way out of those operations steadily by developing and enhancing other people, you've got a shot to build a scalable business that you can then test and see where the fire is going to start when I step away. And that just tells you, I got to fix that. And then you take, all right, first trip away was 3 days. Then you take a week. Then you take 2 weeks. Then you take a month. And wherever, a fire started, that's a problem that you got to address. And then you fix it. And eventually you have a self-managed company.
Yeah. Never heard it explained so clearly like that.
Thanks.
I mean, it's a very simplistic way of saying like, here, this is how you test your business to make sure that you have a business instead of a job for yourself. Right. Testing it little by little like that. That's amazing. Okay. So I want to ask maybe a little bit of a difficult question here then.
I like difficult questions. Give them to me.
Okay, cool. So I would say, and I can speak to this for myself in my own entrepreneurial journey, but I also hear this from many others that, I get to work with on a weekly and daily basis. And that is running out of motivation, right? Running out of gas, right?
Hmm.
And my question is this: do you believe that it's motivation that drives us as entrepreneurs, or that it's more on the side of discipline? And whichever you're leaning towards, how do we help improve or increase that amount of either motivation or discipline that we have?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is yes. It's all of it.
Right?
But the nuanced answer is I sense that it is the way I lean is it's going to be more motivation. And yes, you have discipline is what channels the motivation and what refines it. And it's like, all right, I want to go in a direction, stay on the road. That's going to channel my motivation to go somewhere and allow me to get there faster and more efficiently. Now, I think you can run out of motivation. Like I ran, I've run out of gas a couple different times. And sometimes that's the vision of the company. I just don't resonate with it. Sometimes it's, or we've gone different ways, and that time for me to be in that business has passed. And I'm ready for the next chapter, or next role within the company. I have another friend. He's started a very successful company. He's the chief innovation officer. He's no longer the CEO. He doesn't take part in the daily activities. He doesn't even show up at the office very often. But he innovates and comes back and has big ideas that move it forward sometimes. And then, but then also you can run out of gas. I was on a flight on Sunday. I was watching LinkedIn Learning on depression and mental health on the flight on this Alaskan Airlines flight, and they talked about, interesting stat: CEOs struggle with depression more than 2 times the average human being. Which is pretty crazy. I never thought of that. I didn't, but it kind of makes sense. You've got a lot of stress, a lot of stakes you're carrying, and when you go through prolonged high stress periods in life, you can start burning your adrenals. You can start burning out of those reserve fuels. That's why, U.S. presidents, they look like they age so fast after they get out of office, except for Donald Trump and his fake hair, right? But most of them is like they really age and their hair gets a lot grayer. And so the stress level can really truly cause even complete breakdown. And so as an entrepreneur, I've learned for me to be sustainable, I've got to manage 4 energy quadrants: emotional. Like I keep my emotional connection, my heart, my joy high. If my joy is suffering too much, I'm not going to want to do it. My mental, am I getting challenged and stimulated at a healthy level, not an extreme level where I'm going to break down. Third, physical. Am I renewing my body? Am I renewing my mind? Am I getting enough self-care? Am I eating well? Am I exercising well? Am I taking days off? And then spiritual. Do I have purpose in this? If those things all stay pretty high and a healthy level, I'm actually going to be pretty sustainable and I'm not going to burn out. But I can burn out if those things go awry.
I resonate with that quite a bit. I think that's probably one of the areas that I would say requires an additional layer, additional level of awareness. And when you're first starting out, but also too, to check in with yourself on an ongoing basis, maybe even just put it on the calendar and say, okay, at the end of every month, got to check in and see how these things are going for myself. And that was a perfect list, Mike, of just kind of, all of these different areas that we're dealing with. Awesome. Okay, great answer. So I guess kind of playing on that same concept, what would you say in, the many hundreds of entrepreneurs and business owners that you've had the experience of coaching or working with, what would you say is the cause of hitting that plateau, right? Whether it's in business or just, for ourselves personally in personal development. What is typically that reason for hitting a plateau, and how do we get out of those slumps, if you will?
Yeah, usually it's something where your rhythm is just off. You think of in music, What makes great songs and great music? It's the space between the notes.
Hmm.
Most entrepreneurial big ideas, Red Bull. How did the founder of Red Bull come up with the idea of Red Bull? He's in Thailand on a trip. He's an Austrian businessman in Thailand on a trip, pops into his taxi driver, and he's like, "Hey, I got an important meeting. Hey, can you pull over to a gas station and give me an energy drink of some sort, something that will give me a jolt?" And he comes out and gives him this little drink with a Red Bull on it, and he notices, he perked up, and he's like, "Oh, this is great!" And it's got taurine, and it's got all these vitamin B's and a little bit of caffeine, and that became, eventually he created his own formula using that core essence. And Steve Jobs, we have fonts because he's wandering around college as a 19-year-old hippie that's unenrolled in college, walking around barefoot, and he stumbles in and audits a calligraphy class, and that becomes the basis of fonts. So that space, if you're on the hamster wheel, most of us in American culture, we're on the grind. We're that hamster on the wheel. You're not going to have any breakthrough ideas when you're just grinding away. Sometimes we do need to grind, but if you stay on the grind forever, you're going to be a grinder, not a breakthrougher.
Man, what an incredible reminder. I think that especially in, kind of our society, it's that stigma of you got to be hustling 24/7, grinding constantly. If your schedule's not packed, then you're not being productive, right? But it's actually the opposite that is true for those that are truly successful, that, do leave times in their schedule intentionally for exactly what you're talking about. That's, yeah, such a beautiful way of saying that. Awesome. Okay, so let's pivot then into this concept of finding your genius, your zone of genius. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think we all know that we're naturally good at certain things and we're naturally not so good at certain things. And now I like to get a little more crystal clear on those things. And when you get really clear, for example, if you look at a well-oiled sports team, think of New England Patriots with Tom Brady, right? And they were well-oiled. They knew, like Bill Belichick's motto at the Patriots was do your job, not do someone else's job, do your job. You've got your thing to do your job. And he would put the right people in the right positions. And Tom Brady knew how, like, it's mismatch. He knows throw to this person in the right time, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, so you look at great teams, and great organizations are great teams, right? How do we ensure that if this person is the phenomenal creative, but they suck at managing people, let them be the creative visionary that doesn't have to manage people. You're rarely good at both. It's a different mindset and wiring. And let them generate the ideas and then help drive the vision. And some people love numbers. They love the data. Some people, they see a spreadsheet and their eyes glaze over and they want to run for the hills. So you got to know who you are. And if extraordinary companies, they typically are preceded by people being in extraordinarily right positions. And what if you could reverse engineer what's my right position? And so when I was coaching and mentoring a lot of entrepreneurs, I couldn't give everybody the same cookie cutter formula, because it doesn't work that way. You're a human being. You're unique. I think there's 4 main areas of life that when you're looking for your zone of genius, the clues, you want to gather clues from these 4 areas. And if you gather enough clues, the answers will pop like popcorn. And then you'll find your $1,000 or $10,000 an hour activities instead of suffering over here in your $20 an hour activities. So the clues, do you want me to break those down for a sec? The 4 areas?
That'd be amazing. Yes,
cool.
Please.
All right. Unique talents. So I have people go through 5 different personality tests. Why 5 different personality tests? Because they all measure something different. For example, one of my favorites is the wealth dynamics. That shows you your natural pathway to build wealth. And it gives you, there's 8 different profiles that you can be. And then it gives you a story of an example of another founder that's built wealth using your personality test or your personality profile. Then the second one, or the second leg, after you gather like literally hundreds of pages of data about, hey, Hillary's a badass at this. She also sucks ass at this. Let's be honest. Okay? And that's okay. And
Yeah.
let's be honest. We got to own that. Then you do your defining life experiences. Like, there's probably moments. How old are you, Hillary? Well, I
I'm
shouldn't ask the
30.
girl then.
Oh, it's
Okay, you're
okay.
30.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
30.
All right.
Mhm.
So you're early, but you're not brand new to your
Sure.
entrepreneurial leadership journey. You've got clues, you've got moments in time and whispers, nudges, things that, oh, I love doing that.
hmm
Oh, that brought me life. Oh, I hate doing that. That was like pulling, a hangnail off of a camel. That's no fun, right? So life, you figure out what are those defining life moments, also your messes that become your message, your breakdown that leads to your breakthrough. There's a reason a lot of fitness coaches are, they used to be overweight or they had some health issue that prompted them into this. Like I started Superhuman IV because I was burned out and running on fumes, and my wife was battling depression, and we knew prescription drugs weren't going to be the solution.
Hmm.
And I kept looking for answers and found an answer to both those problems. And I want to feel like I'm 30 again. I'm 43, and I'm pretty much feeling like I'm 30 again. It's pretty amazing. Last year, I felt like I was becoming 50. And then the third thing, your key relationships, people that bring you life versus death. And then also, who's your natural relationship network with? Like I noticed I love being around authors. I was kind of bored being around all my real estate friends. But the authors brought me life. Oh, that's maybe a part of my future. That's a nudge. That's a whisper. Fourth thing, values and passions. What do you stand for? What do you stand against? And what are you curious about? Passions. A curiosity often becomes or an interest becomes a curiosity. A curiosity becomes a passion, and a passion often becomes a path. But you got to like feed that curiosity, trust that inkling of curiosity. Elon was curious about space. He started SpaceX, right? After he did
Right.
PayPal and after he did these other things, right? So anyway, that's a quick but comprehensive overview, I guess.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much for mapping that out for us too. I think that there are so many interesting points of that as well. One that really stood out to me is with your network, what types of professionals are you drawn to? We always hear that you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with, but that almost takes it a level deeper of, okay, yeah, you want to be around successful people or people that are, pursuing personal development or XYZ, but in what area, in what space, in what, topic or industry. So that's a really cool perspective of, almost taking that a level deeper. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mike. So
Yeah, of course.
I want to ask, for those individuals who maybe are at the place where they know that they don't want to stay where they're at, meaning maybe, the basic 9 to 5 job, putting money into the 401k every year and hoping that there's some money for retirement, right? Maybe they're wanting to get out of that matrix, right? But they're not quite sure what they can do to get out of that, whether it's, monetizing a skill or starting some type of business. What would you recommend for those individuals that maybe have, an idea of some things that they like, but have no idea of how that would become something that they could create a business from eventually?
Yeah, I think, you start with making that a side hustle.
Hmm.
Where could you test this out? Could you shadow? Like we were talking with someone that wanted to be a lawyer recently, and she's not through law school, or she's not even in law school yet. She's still an undergrad, and we were suggesting, hey, make sure you want to be a lawyer. Go shadow, spend a week or spend a few days or whatever, interview a bunch of attorneys and figure out, hey, is this really what I want? You might be analytical and detailed and all those things, but maybe there's another role that would be more fulfilling.
Mhm.
So test, especially early on. you got to cast a wide net, test a bunch of different things, and see where you gain traction. Sometimes you also gain traction in this because that's the right thing for right now, but it might set the stage for something else. And so that's test and see, create a side hustle or a shadow, and explore. Have fun exploring. Never, some of the most creative and brilliant individuals of our time stayed endlessly curious. Steve Jobs, endlessly curious. Leonardo da Vinci, one of his core one of the core essences of Da Vinci was he was curious. He was driven by curiosity. That's why he was an expert, far ahead, hundreds of years ahead of his time, because he was so curious about anatomy, art, and painting, military structures, physics, all these things. The dude was a genius, but he was endlessly curious. He was one of the most curious human beings of all time.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's so true. So true. I was talking to someone, it was like, I think just last week or so, we were talking about that concept of almost being childlike with wanting to learn and just wanting to soak up as much information as you can, which, I mean, we're so privileged in the world that we live in today to have that technology and information at our fingertips. Do something with it. Right. Cool.
yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, I have to ask, just purely from my selfish curiosity, I saw that there was a year that you lost almost $1 million. Can you tell me the story?
Oh man, that was a sucky year, but our mess becomes our message, our breakdowns lead to our breakthroughs, right? So, during that season, I really, I had made a series of bad decisions that in risk. When you take risk, sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. And then that season, I had things that would normally maybe pan out 70% of the time. I was down to like 30%, and it was just like it was almost like I was being forced a divine storm, forced out of certain things as well. One of them being real estate. And I had my first flip that I ever lost money on. That happened, and I lost like 250 grand total. And then I had my cash cow business disintegrate right before we got married. And I had a few other, my fashion business and my marketing agency. I was not a good marketing agency owner, so I had all these things kind of disintegrate and implode all within essentially 1 year time period, all around the time I got married. And so just stack after stack, and that can also give you some PTSD and whiplash as well. So it was a rough season, but I knew that, I actually stumbled on this concept called Twice Born. That's going to be part of my second book, around when you go through life, if you don't face any real challenges, you're kind of be happy-go-lucky, but you don't have any big ups and you don't have big downs, and life is more steady. We all have some heartache and things like that, but then there's those that are twice born. They're born again through the midst of hardship. And this originally comes from William James of Harvard, if I remember correctly. But you go through this life and you recognize also how fragile aspects of life are, and how precious it is, and how precious your business and relationships and gifts are. And you hold them with more gratitude and more awareness of the fragility of life. And so, but you become born again, and you emerge out of that season of darkness with hope, and with inspired hope, but also recognizing the delicacy of hope.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, very beautifully said. Almost poetic.
My wife's a poet, so maybe it's rubbing off on me.
It's rubbing off, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's very cool. Well, and I was very curious and had to ask, because I am a strong believer that we do learn the most important lessons, or the most important, things that we need to understand to really launch us to the next level in our lives, from failures, right? From the things that we find as, mistakes or learning lessons, right? I like to call them. So yeah, that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, so that's it, very potentially dark, moment, dark year, and kind of finding yourself in this place. What did it look like on the way back up? And what was my more intentional question behind that is, what was the mindset shift that had to take place? And how did you go about, you know, um, I guess promoting that or putting things in front of yourself that you knew would help you find or realign with the success that you wanted to
Hmm.
achieve?
Yeah, there's a lot of reflection and also some grieving. You gotta let yourself
Mm.
grieve when you go through dark moments because that helps the energy process through you. But also I had my wife was incredibly supportive. I doubt I would have made it without her help. My mom, the two most important women in my life were very supportive and loving and kind and believing in me. And also, I had prepared myself by studying and reading enough biographies and enough stories to know, oh, Henry Ford was bankrupt twice by the age of 43, and that's when he started Ford Motor Company. Steve Jobs kicked out of his own company at 35, didn't return for another 10 years. Um, Elon Musk almost went bankrupt multiple times in 2018. Now he's the world's wealthiest man, and he had to borrow money to pay for rent. Right? After making 130 million, you look at all these stories. I knew Famous Dave's the guy had in John Maxwell's book Failing Forward, like he had suffered and made mistakes, and the store almost burned down, and then like Whole Foods, same thing, like all of these crazy entrepreneurial stories, the hero's journey of where they're on the way up and then pits of despair, and then they bounce back and they decide to navigate and pull out of that pit of despair. So I had prepared, and then I had enough people close to me as well during that season that I knew they went through really crazy, rough seasons as well, and they were encouraging and sharing their stories too. So that was, and some grace and love from close friends too.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. I I love that, and I've noticed that this is kind of a theme in our conversation too, that um you study the stories of successful individuals from the past and from history. And I think that's really cool. And I've noticed that that is something that many successful entrepreneurs do, is looking at the history and the story of, those in the past and what it took for them to get to that big win that maybe came after
Yeah,
many other, many other failures or many other pieces there. I
100% though.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I guess one of the last questions that I have for you on this, Mike, is more specifically around your book, The Genius Within. Just out of curiosity for both myself and for the listeners, as individuals finding our zone of genius, do you believe that that coincides with also the ability to become entrepreneurial, or to start, for each person to start their own business or to start their own ventures that way? Or do you feel that that maybe is not the journey for for every person?
Yeah, I think different individuals you can be wired very differently and become an entrepreneur, but your path to it is a lot different. For example, on the wealth dynamics, one of my partners on the nursing, I'm sorry, the superhuman IV, she's a nurse,
Hmm.
and she's a mechanic. Mechanics are notoriously slow starters. They will not start something. They've overanalyzed it, created processes and procedures, and they'll never start it because it's just not necessarily in all cases, but they're very slow to start things. A creator, I'm really fast to start things, and I will get bored by the time a project or a business is like 80% working, and I want to move on
Yep.
and create something else.
Hmm.
Like Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Elon is another example, right? Where we have big ups and big downs. Mechanics more steady.
Hmm.
Um, and so because we're working together, it's actually a great compliment. I galvanize us to get it off the ground, get us out the door, and actually start it and help improve it, improve the model, and then she helps improve it. She makes it better, and she refines it, and she's going to be a steadier, like, operating partner. I'm going to be driving innovation. She'll help operate it and make sure it runs really, really well. So it just depends on your wiring. And that's why the self-awareness piece is so valuable. Because if I'm aware of who I am, how I'm wired, then I can put myself in the right position. Because everyone has different positions. So, and I can look for the right business partner that complements me instead of competes with me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's such an important piece too, I think, to understand that just because you are, finding these different areas or focusing on these different areas of maybe your genius or the areas that you're passionate about, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fit into the role of, business CEO, or that you have to fit into the role of salesperson or whatever it is, right? There are individuals all around us who have that as an innate attribute that they hold.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very, very good point. Awesome. Okay. So Mike, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insight into, all of these different things that we've talked about today. For our listeners, where can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you, and where can they find the book?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Hillary, and pleasure connecting. So I'm on all the social media platforms as the Mike Zeller, and then the book is geniuswithinbook.com, and you can get it for free there, just cover shipping and handling, or on Amazon or wherever books are sold as well. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know what resonates, what hits you, what questions you have, and I'll do my best to respond and support.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Marketing Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, rate our show, and share with your friends on social media. You can also join our community by visiting us online at marketingmastermindpodcast.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.